Yes. So continuing the discussion ahead, my next question is for Aditi. Aditi, when we read about the Millennium Development Goals, the second goal says that it talks about the education, and we also think that when it comes to school children, there are some disabilities, might be mental and psychosocial disabilities are increased, and that is has led to school dropout, or might be class repetition, or might be poor academic performance. So what measures can be taken in order to make sure that children are taught about the mental health, the basics of, at least basic concepts of mental health, or about social and emotional learning in schools itself?
Right. So I think I'm going to jump back a little bit to your first question around, what is the gap also, and then go into this one, because I think that it's really interesting when you look at the Millennium Development Goals and you see the explicit lack of mention about mental health. And the fact that, when you look at the statistics put out by the WHO and UN organizations, and what we can see in our lives every day, is you see the kind of impact mental health is having. And the fact that there is not even an explicit mention of it is really scary, number one. So forget our awareness and the fact that, like everyone rightly said, there's a problem, whether it's in our cities or in our country, it's universal. It's the fact that mental health is not being recognized. And that's one part of it, which is to recognize it on paper and have it as part of an agenda, because even that doesn't always work. But I think that's one gap. Two, when I look at all of them, all the MDGs, and you also look at now the Sustainable Development Goals, which they've come up with again 18, and again not explicitly mentioned mental health, unfortunately. You see that mental health pretty much, almost in my mind, comes into each one, almost. And like you're talking about education, it's like you can't see any of these goals without the mental health component. So when you look at education, right, if children are struggling with mental health issues, if you look at gender, if you say there's violence in the homes, and then that impact on the mother or the family or the children exists, and you expect a child to come in and focus and concentrate and study and achieve and break through that space of not just getting into a schooling system, which initially was the purpose around the goal that let's get more children in school, but now it's about let's get more children completing school. But if children's mental health is not taken care of, or human beings' mental health is not taken care of, then how are we studying? How are we focusing? How are we concentrating? How are we achieving the potential that we are, working towards, whatever that might be in whichever field, whether it's academic, whether it's, to look at in other field, whether it's dance, whether it's art, whether it's music, whatever that might be for me. So I think that's one key factor. The other, like you said, in terms of looking at solutions, is also how do we integrate mental health conversations beyond life skills education period, which I wish worked actually like a good life skills education period. And if it does in some spaces, fantastic. But I think to really integrate mental health, not just as one period, but as something we train the teachers to understand, we help teachers understand how to interact with students, how to sort of support their functioning. So very simple things like when we compare children, you have an older sibling in the same school and you have a younger sibling and you say, oh, tumhara bhai kitna achhe se karta tha, ya, you kind of draw that comparison, the impact that has. The fact that developmentally, do we understand where children stand at 4, what they need at 8, what they need at 12, what they will react to like at 15. And if as a institution, as teachers, as parents, as adults, we are not informed or we don't understand mental health repercussions or even basic life skills or how to build them and develop them. Having one life skills period where at least Hamari time when it started was one random moral story, which would be great in addition to if everything else was happening. But when it's not, that doesn't even leave a dent in the larger picture. So I think one would be institutions, educational institutions, mainstreaming mental health into their frameworks, not just as one period. Two, also looking at creating that space for life skills development and preventive mental health action into the larger education system, which would be fabulous, including pulling in parents wherever we can. When I do workshops in schools and we try and get parents in, it's getting better. But I think the younger bachas' parents will come in faster, whether it's a community organization or a school or wherever you go for a workshop or to do a mental health session. I remember designing a 6-month program around bullying that we pitched to schools completely free of cost, saying, you know what, we're going to come in and this is how we work with you and our time, our people. And everyone was like, yeah, come and do the first workshop. Come and do the 45-minute period in assembly. And this is a free program for 6 months. But we want a tick mark कि आपने कर लिया है, bullying का हो गया, very good, आपने one movement therapy workshop कर लिए, एक art activity कर लिए, you're sorted. But I think that's the mindset that we need to change. That mental health is not a tick box anymore. We look at, 1 million deaths by suicide every year. We look at depression being one of the largest, mental health, or not even mental health, actually debilitating factors in terms of health in general. And again, no mention in the Sustainable Development Goals around mental health. There's health and well-being, but when you read that in detail, big gap around a question mark. So I think that would be education, and I think it would then fan out into all the other development goals that we're talking about. Yeah.
Yes. I also feel like when it comes to, including SEL, the battle is not only on one side about teaching it to students, but it is also on the other side, like no science or maths ki teacher ke nahi padha sakti SEL bachon ko. So we also need to, do it on the other side, like training teachers or giving those things to them, which in order they will teach to the students. So I guess the battle is on both sides.
Yeah, because a child will learn from who? When we're growing, you're mirroring from adults around you or people around you or media around you, social media, whatever kind of media. And if that is not altered, then education, ABC पढ़ के where will we get? Where is growth, development, well-being, emotional and or otherwise? And that will take a toll in their future. That will take a toll professionally. That will take a toll then on the larger goal of, sustainability in terms of work and sustainable cities and all of these things that we're looking at.
Yeah, definitely. All right, we have another panel speaker who has just joined us. Yuti, are you able to hear me?
Yes, I am.
Okay, welcome. And before moving ahead, I would just love if you could introduce yourselves in brief to us.
Sure. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you are. Just be a little loud.
Yes. My video is a little bit stuck, so I don't.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Yuti Doshi from Mumbai, and I have been working in this field since 4 years, psychologist. I have completed clinical psychology masters, and I have worked extensively with children and parents as a school counselor previously. My aim is to work with children and parents and change the whole parenting system, how it actually happens, and also help spread mental health awareness.
Okay. We are great to have you. And before coming to you, I would just love to take this question for Ruchi. So Ruchi, now when we are talking about the third MDG, it talks about, gender equality and women. So there have been a lot of issues when it comes to gender equality and specifically mental health, like Rashi was talking about one of them. And it also, when we talk about women, there are also a lot of things like domestic violence, there's sexual abuse that comes in picture. And in turn, there are a lot of effects of, all those things that happen related to mental health. So what do you think, like we can, kind of not solutions, but at least some measures that need to be taken to kind of, make sure that something is given to that third MDG, like some measures or some solutions?
Yeah, thank you for your question, Shalmali. I think I want to take a step back before we even talk about measures to understand the culture that surrounds discrimination or gender discrimination, the rape culture, women, any of this, right? So any kind of community you go into, whether it's an under-resourced community or not, the culture is something we need to understand, because culture is something that is so deeply ingrained in how we think, in how we believe, in how we see the world around us. So the solution needs to start, or the measures need to start at a root level. Because unless and until we're not able to change that or create a shift in that culture, just changing the law or changing the punishment or changing any of that will just become a short-term measure or sort of a quick fix, right? So interestingly enough, 2 days ago, I was watching a video or a sort of a mini documentary on the rape culture in a couple of states in our country. And even despite being in this field for so many years, working with certain communities, it still opened my eyes and it still made me think about what are my biases. So when I talk about changing the culture and changing conversations at the grassroots level, it's not even about trying to educate somebody else. Let's start checking in with ourselves and recognizing what is my bias. How do I see gender differences? How do I see men and women? How do I treat men and women in my life? Right? And everyone's talked about needs to start at home. Aruba also mentioned, we need to start within our homes, within our communities. So at the grassroots also, I think the biggest thing, and it might be the most challenging thing to do, but it is let's shift our conversations, let's shift our perspectives, and let's start that by even first checking in with ourselves, right? I mean, so often you read things and it's like, it's a sentence about depression, for example. The pronoun used for whatever reason is she. How many of us are even noticing that? Are we saying he or she? Are we saying they? So it starts in our languaging, our conversations, our belief systems. And once we start changing that, then we can get to conversations about creating safe spaces for women, making sure there's mental health services accessible to men and women both equally, shifting the conversation about how men can also access mental health services. Interestingly enough, in this lockdown, I have had an increase in men, people who identify as male, coming to me for mental health services. And it's, that's kind of what it's leading to. So whether you talk about, rape, PTS, whether you talk about gender discrimination or any of this, it needs to start with our foundational belief systems, that, and kind of what Rashi was also talking about before, and also what Aditi, I think what everybody's saying plays a part. Where did this conversation shift starts? It starts in organizations, it starts in your education system, it starts in your homes. As a parent, not just saying, oh, don't cry because you're a boy, and looking at women and saying, it's okay, or something else. So shifting this grassroots level definitely needs to change in our belief systems and the culture we have as a society.
Yes, definitely. Well, so my next question would be for Anagha. So there's 20 to 40% of women in developing countries who experience depression during pregnancy or during childbirth or after childbirth. So what could be some of the solutions or measures taken in order to make mental health accessible when it comes to maternal health?
Thank you for the question. So, like everybody's been talking about awareness, I think that plays such a huge role, whether it's at a grassroots level or at a systemic government level. And I just really want to touch upon the duty and the responsibility of the state to also sort of step in here and recognize that this is a problem. And why I say that is because, we know that in India, maternal health, especially in rural areas, has consistently been a problem, right? Not having access to good medical and mental health systems, especially postpartum, leads to so many unnecessary and avoidable issues, which can be very easily treated. So if this is organized or recognized at a larger level, as a system or from the government, so many rules can be placed, or so many sort of procedures and policies can be placed for women, especially after childbirth. So just like, it's routine practice to get checkups from your OBGYN or a pediatrician after you've given birth, why not also add a layer of mental health to that? Like once a month or once in 2 months, check up with a therapist or check up with a psychiatrist to see how you're doing mentally. I think another issue that really contributes to this, like Ruti was just saying, on a more societal level, is how we view men and women, or how we view boys and girls. And we know that a girl child being born till today in so many families is seen as a liability. That immediately puts the mother at risk, right? If you've given birth to a girl child, women can face so many different layers of abuse. They can face harassment, so many kinds of pressure, which can lead them to develop these mental health issues on top of being the primary caretaker of the child. So I think, to me, I really look at sort of the organizational responsibility for something like this. Even education of doctors and medical professionals who are primarily responsible for new mothers and infants, like pediatricians and gynecologists, is really important. I don't know if it's really mentioned in their curriculum because I'm not familiar with the field, but if it's not, it should be. And even if it's not and it can't, then these things need to be talked about in like academic seminars, conferences, and stuff like that. A very few of us are privileged enough to have access to mental health professionals as it is in India, and on top of that, to have access to gynecologists and obstetricians who are aware that postpartum issues are a real problem. So we're looking at a very small percentage of people who not only are aware, but have access to these things. So I think it needs to really start at a government level, because that's where you will find most women going in for their labor and deliveries. And if it starts from there, then, sort of you're making a larger impact.
Yes, that's true. Well, okay, now next question is for Yuti, and it's related to obviously the rural areas. Like when we talk about, spreading awareness and making mental health accessible and affordable, most of the part of India is rural, and there are villages where people are not even aware of the concept of mental health. So what could be done in order to make mental health accessible, affordable, and moving towards that? First, I would say that how would we make them, teach the basic concepts of mental health and tell them, okay, there's something called as mental health that also exists.
This is a really good question, Shalmali. The first thing is, as everyone said, the stigma around mental health. I would want to start talking about my own example. I, being a psychology student, mental health professional, everything. When I talk to my parents that, maybe you could, consult someone, they get offensive. And I think this happens with everyone, So that's true. And no, like nothing is wrong with me. So I completely understand going to the grassroots level and explaining everyone. But when it comes to rural areas, it is it's a very far-fetched dream right now. That's what I feel, because they are not even having the basic necessities met. For example, having basic uh, medical facilities or things like that. Also, the kind of mental health problems that they face are completely different than what we urban people face. They have a lot of issues regarding what do you call substance abuse and things like that. So I think we can definitely reach them, but our curriculum, the psychology curriculum that we study, maybe we could include an internship, like how medical students have rural internship. Maybe we also could have a rural internship or something like that, that each psychology student or a mental health, whoever is studying health, even medical students, should be taught about a bit, at least the basics about mental health, primary mental health. Like how most of us are talking about, nowadays on social media about first aid, mental health first aid. Every child knows, if for example, if my temperature is hot, I have to tell my mother and they will check with a thermometer. Or if I touch something hot, I have to immediately put my hand in water. That's basic, like a completely basic awareness that a child has about physical health. Now we need to, in terms of mental health, we need this kind of awareness, starting with children and parents. And I feel that it can start only if every second person starts talking about mental health. And this can start with students having internships, rural internships, if you're talking about rural areas. Also, experts and professionals who are practicing, maybe we can develop policies and programs, government policies. We can help in contributing in making a policy in such a way how how we have for education, compulsory primary education, similarly compulsory mental health education or something like that. Awareness programs are something that will help, and that too especially in obviously vernacular languages. I think that would
Okay.
really help.
Yes, that's true. All right, so as we are, moving towards the end of this panel discussion, this question would be common to all of you. What would be those take backs, or not only take backs, but any message that you want to give to the people out there related to mental health or related to integrating mental health in order to realize MDGs? So I would love to go ahead with Aruba.
I was listening to each and every question and everybody was giving such beautiful inputs. So I was just noting down points what I wanted to touch on. For example, we said that how can we create an awareness in children, because we have dropouts, we have all these issues going on. I make this compulsory when people come to me for family therapy. I make it compulsory that once a week you have to sit on your dining table and ask your children, how are you feeling? And when you say, how are you feeling, you really have to take emotions and write it down on the paper. Because as here, Yuti was saying that we teach them physical aid, physical first aid. We teach them how to brush your teeth, how to tie your shoelaces, how to greet your elders, how to touch their feet. But we never teach them, if you're feeling low, how to express it. So I make it compulsory for them. Sometimes I ask them to record a video, so that I see that you are doing it. I check the homework. A lot of people tell me that, why do you see only 3 cases a day? You have, 8 to 9 hours. I tell them, because I do so much of homework with clients, my 3 hours go in 12 hours and I don't even get to know how the day flies. So I do that. Another thing, which is like, we talked a lot about, women going through things, mental health, postpartum, prepartum, blah, blah, blah. But when we talk about suicide, suicide is more into men. Then again, the patriarchal system, men are not supposed to cry, men are not supposed to show their weaknesses, and that pushes them to the edge. So I guess that again comes at the, when they are children, they are told that they can express their emotions absolutely okay. And recently a person came to me and said, I was raped. So this young gentleman tells me that I was raped, but nobody believed me. They said, you were drunk and you had sex. I did not have sex. I am telling it for last 5 years. And that has made me important now. I don't get the erection. So, when men say that I was raped, we don't trust them. Men are men. They can do anything. So again, how Ruchi said, the bias has to be changed. How are we taking things? So there is. And when we say maternal health, postpartum depression and all, I am so surprised that all the gynecologists have become counselors. I was taking this course in hypnotherapy and we had 4 gynecologists taking the course. I was like, but why do you need? You're a gynecologist, you're a full-fledged practice, you don't have time to breathe. Now they want to do the counseling as well for the client. Come on, like, you are a gynecologist, do your job. I'm proud of you. Do your job. Why do you want to take another expertise and then do half of it, half of that? And everybody wants to do everything. Okay, what is the role of psychiatrist and psychologist and counselor? What is the role of them then? So it is very important. I try to reach out to gynecologists and try to have collaborations and tell them that I will also refer you clients, but please do refer the clients who need help, because it's very important. Maybe for them it's just a case, but for me, mental health is very personal and I try to do that. So it's very important that medical professionals also understand that mental health is something serious, which they are not. They seriously are not, though they are medical fraternity, but they don't understand that they need to go to a counselor. Now, maybe in fancy hospitals, good hospitals, it is coming there. They are saying that, yeah, you need to see a therapist. But in other hospitals, it is still not coming. They're like, kuch nahi hai, dimag mein hai, theek ho jayega. Okay, if kidney stone is real, but mental health problem is not real, according to medical professionals also. I guess we need to touch there also, where we have to talk to the medical fraternities. Now, the very, very sad thing, which I recently got to know because of this COVID, which I had no awareness of. I have been running a studio for last 6 years. And I have set up 3 other studios for 3 different people. But I did not know in psychology, we charge people to intern with us, because I always paid stipend to people to work with me. And during this time, when people were approaching that I want to intern with you, and we were taking only 5 interns a month, I said, we don't have vacancy. They're like, ma'am, we will pay any amount of money. I was like, why would you pay me money? Which is not happening in any of the fields, but in psychology, we are charging people to intern with us. How are people going to get trained? I was very sad when I got to hear this. Every year I take an internship with some hospital just to upgrade myself. But since I know the doctors and counselors, they never charged me. So I did not know actually people pay for it. And it was very saddening that you are charging people to intern with you to teach them something which you are very good expert at, which does not happen in MBBS. MBBS students are paid, physiotherapy students are paid, and you are charging people. So I guess that again is something we need to change, we need to talk about. And it should not be there. Aditi is agreeing it because they are charging a lot of money from interns. So yeah, you know, we need to talk all these things. And on a larger level, I would say just, as I said, I believe in one step at a time. I believe that if you have some expertise, it becomes your responsibility to talk about it, not to shy away, go out. Maybe people will not listen to you now, but they are going to listen to you tomorrow if there's a consistency. But what we are doing is like, आज I'm talking about suicide is bad, self-harm is bad, and then I disappear. Why? Because people did not respond to me. So I guess if we are choosing something, have the consistency, be there. And I'm sure it is going to make change if we believe in it. In smaller steps, but it will surely do. And if we as professionals are able to change one life in this lifetime, our job is done. Baaki sab chhod do.
Wow, that's really great. I mean, all the points that you mentioned, we did, clearly need to take a note of that and, kind of start working on that. So thank you so much. I would request Anagha to go next.
Yeah, I really, I agree with Aruba on so many points. What I also thought of is, the way I see it with our population, we've got a huge employable young population, right? And you see the skew in careers that are chosen. And you will see most young doctors and students going for the really profitable fields like engineering and some more secure and stable fields like medicine. And even within that, they want to go into things like orthopedic and surgery and stuff like that, because naturally it's profitable and it's financially stable and there's high demand. But what is happening, I notice, is because a lot of mental health professionals on an organizational level, especially because I come from a tier 2 city, so my experience is sort of based on that, they don't get compensated well. So even if you're, looking to get into this because this is a field of your choice, there's very often resistance from the families. Because first of all, you have to go the BA route most of the times. And that's immediately a little bit frowned upon as opposed to a science field. And then on top of that, there's no real job security or high compensation for the work that you do. Even as a private practitioner, I've always been at that crossroad or that dilemma of, lowering my fee for a client. But then I know that it can be really unfulfilling sometimes if you feel like you're not getting compensated for the amount of work that goes in. So I know I keep coming back to the system and to the government, but I feel like that plays a big role here. If there is a way that the government can find, maybe, through like an act or a bill, where mental health professionals, at least working in government organizations, are compensated well, I think that can immediately create a motive to get into this field. And this is on a professional level. Even if we're not talking about a professional level, like I said, we've got a very large young population. Even if we don't turn them into mental health professionals, we can turn them into mental health advocates, right? So just like, I'm happy we have Rashi here, who's not a professional, but you're so vocal and you've done such amazing work in the field. Like there's so much potential for all of us to make a difference, even if we're not trained to do so. And I think that's what we really need to explore more, invest more in. And in that, I agree with you, Aruba. If you have an intern coming to seek help from you, do it for free, because they're going to go and probably educate 5 other people. So it's for the larger good.
Yeah, thank you so much. Okay, so moving ahead again, this is going to be a common question for the remaining speakers, and I would just, love for you all to just focus on the take backs. I mean, 2 or 3 take backs from the session, and I would love to go ahead with Ruchi.
If you're talking about take backs from the session, I think what's really resonating with me is that number one, there are people who are willing to have these conversations. Just the fact that there is, 9 of us, 8 of us here, the conversations are happening, which is very heartening to know. And I say that being aware that when I also reached out to family members or relatives before I wanted to study and get my master's in counseling and dance movement therapy, there were so many people, kind of like Anagha is saying, right? You won't make money quickly. It's not a very it's not a long term sort of sustainable career. Are you sure you want to do this? There was so much doubt. There was so much doubt in me and in people around me. Since I've come back after studying and working abroad, since I've been working here, understanding how practices function here, I think what I'm taking back is that the conversations are happening. And, whether it's Rashi with her entire change making initiative, which clearly has a very tangible outcome, which is just so exciting to see, and everybody in doing what they're doing individually. That's one. And the second one is very interesting. I think all of us, even in this panel, function and think at so many different levels. There's the grassroots level, there's the policy level, there's the education institutional level, there's changing national policies with what each of us is doing. And I feel like if all of us, like Aruba said, if it's just one person or one aspect of mental health and one level of the system and the culture that we work within, I think if each of us stick to that, do that, work on that while being aware of what else is out there, I think we can create some sort of change. And I don't say that as a complete romantic. I think there's tangible and absolute quantifiable things around us that are happening. And I think the last thing I want to offer is, I always have this, it's a very idealistic image and a thought, but I think it's a very important one. When we're born, we're all associated to a pediatrician, and then we all get associated to a GP in our entire lives. Why don't we extend the same service to mental health? Why is not every child who's born, why don't we have a counselor on our speed dial? If we need it, when we need it, why is that not introduced as parents, as families, and as systems? And if that happens, which is, something very big and flowery that I always say, I think that's when, we'll start seeing change and systematic change as well.
Yeah, that's really true. I guess we need to join the meeting once again, because there are only a few minutes left and we still have 4-5 speakers left. So I just request you to again log in, and I'll end the meeting now.